The cold and arrogant millionaire never believed in love, until the cleaner at his company saved his life and made his heart change. The shrill sound of the fire alarm echoed through the corridors of Vertex Enterprises, sending waves of panic through the 52 floors of the glass and steel skyscraper. Employees ran in all directions, their voices blending into a chaotic chorus of shouts and confused orders. On the 50th floor, Alexander Reeves remained motionless in his office, his eyes fixed on his computer screen, seemingly oblivious to the chaos unfolding around him. "Mr. Reeves, Mr. Reeves!" The shrill voice of his executive assistant was barely audible over the alarm. "We need to evacuate immediately." Alexander looked up, his face a mask of irritation. "Don't be ridiculous, Patricia. It's obviously a false alarm." "But sir, the smoke." "I said it's a false alarm," he cut in, his voice sharp as a razor. "Now get out and let me finish this report in peace." Patricia hesitated for a moment, her eyes wide with fear, before finally giving in and running for the emergency stairs. Alexander turned his attention to the screen, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he finalized the financial projections for the next quarter. At 35, Alexander Reeves was the youngest CEO in the history of Vertex Enterprises. His dark brown hair, always impeccably combed, and his piercing blue eyes matched his imposing presence. Dressed in a tailored Armani suit, he was the embodiment of American corporate success. But behind the facade of wealth and power, there was a cold and lonely man who saw the world exclusively through the lens of profit and efficiency. As the building emptied, Alexander remained in his sanctuary at the top of Chicago's corporate world. It was only when the acrid smell of smoke began to invade his office that he finally realized the gravity of the situation. He stood up abruptly, but it was too late. A thick curtain of smoke blocked the exit, and the intense heat of the flames could already be felt through the walls. For the first time in years, Alexander Reeves felt fear, real, pure, paralyzing fear. He ran to the window, looking down at the city 50 floors below. Fire sirens echoed in the streets, and a crowd of onlookers was already forming, pointing at the burning building. It was then that he saw her. A lone figure emerged from the service elevator, wearing the simple uniform of the cleaning crew. She looked around, clearly searching for any straggling survivors. "Over here!" Alexander shouted, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "I'm stuck here!" The woman turned in the direction of the voice, her eyes widening at the sight of the CEO trapped in his own office. Without hesitation, she ran towards him, deftly navigating her way through the increasingly dense smoke. "Mr. Reeves!" she called out, coughing. "I'm Olivia from the cleaning team. I've come for you." Alexander stared at her in disbelief. He barely noticed the cleaning staff on a normal day, and here was this woman, risking her life to save him. "This way," Olivia shouted, holding out her hand to him. "I know an emergency exit that few people know about. It's our only chance." Hesitating, Alexander took her hand. Olivia's skin was rough and calloused, scarred by years of hard work, a stark contrast to his own soft, manicured hands. At that moment, however, this hand represented his only hope of survival. Olivia guided him through the maze of smoky corridors, her determination unwavering even in the face of mounting danger. Alexander found himself blindly trusting this woman who, until a few minutes ago, he would have considered completely insignificant. After what seemed like an eternity, they finally reached a small metal door, hidden behind a panel in the wall. Olivia opened it, revealing a narrow, dimly lit maintenance staircase. "Come on, Mr. Reeves," she said, pushing him gently. "This staircase leads directly to the basement. We can get out through the garage." They went down the steps as fast as they could, the air getting cleaner as they moved away from the burning upper floors. Alexander felt his lungs burning, his throat dry and irritated, but Olivia's firm hand on his arm kept him moving. Finally, after what seemed like an endless descent, they emerged into the underground garage. The distant sound of sirens was louder now, and they could hear the voices of the firemen coordinating the rescue efforts. "We made it," Olivia said, a tired but triumphant smile on her soot-covered face. Alexander stared at her, a storm of conflicting emotions raging in his chest. Gratitude, confusion, shame, all mixed together in a maelstrom he could barely comprehend. "Why?" he finally managed to ask. "Why did you come back for me?" Olivia looked him in the eye, her expression serious. "Because every life matters, Mr. Reeves, including yours." Before Alexander could answer, they were surrounded by paramedics and firefighters. The scene that followed was a blur of sirens, flashing lights and worried voices. Alexander was taken to an ambulance, an oxygen mask placed over his face while paramedics checked his vital signs. Through the confusion, he looked for Olivia, but she had disappeared into the crowd. A strange, uncomfortable feeling settled in his chest, something he hadn't felt for a long time. Guilt, regret, he wasn't sure. As the ambulance pulled away from the burning building, Alexander Reeves stared out of the window, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The empire he had built with such care and dedication had almost become his tomb, and he owed his life to a woman whose name he hadn't even known until a few hours ago. The sound of sirens mixed with the noise of the city, creating a chaotic symphony that seemed to echo the turmoil in his mind. For the first time in years, Alexander found himself questioning the certainties that had guided his life until that moment. As the ambulance snaked through the streets of Chicago towards the hospital, Alexander closed his eyes, exhausted. The image of Olivia, with her fearless determination and unconditional compassion, was etched in his mind. He knew that something had fundamentally changed inside him that day. What exactly that change meant and how it would affect his life from now on, he still didn't know. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The constant beeping of the heart monitors filled the silence of the hospital room. Alexander Reeves stared at the sterile white ceiling, his mind still processing the events of the previous day. The smell of antiseptic and the impersonal coldness of the hospital environment were a constant reminder of how close he had come to death. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Reeves." A middle-aged nurse entered, her face kind but professional. "There's someone here to see you, a Miss Olivia Martinez. She says she works for you." Alexander's heart gave an involuntary leap. Olivia, the woman who had risked everything to save him. "Yes," he replied, his voice still hoarse from the smoke. "Please let her in." Moments later, Olivia entered the room. Without the cleaning uniform and the layer of soot, she looked different. Her dark brown hair was tied up in a simple ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a modest blouse. Her hazel eyes, however, still carried the same determination that Alexander had seen the day before. "Mr. Reeves," she said, stopping by the bed. I just wanted to see how you were." Alexander watched her for a moment, struggling to find the right words. "Miss Martinez," he began, then stopped. "Olivia, please sit down." She obeyed, taking a seat in the chair next to the bed. An uncomfortable silence hung between them for a few seconds. "You saved my life," Alexander finally said, his voice low and intense. I don't know how to thank you." Olivia shook her head. "There's no need for thanks, Mr. Reeves. I did what anyone would do." "No," Alexander insisted. "Not anyone. You came back when everyone else had fled. You risked your own life for me. Why?" Olivia looked him in the eye, her expression serious. "Because it's the right thing to do. Every life has value, Mr. Reeves, including yours." Her words hit him like a punch in the gut. How many times had he ignored this fundamental truth in his relentless pursuit of success? How many lives had he deemed expendable in the name of profit and efficiency? "I want to do something for you," he said abruptly. "Anything. Name your price." Olivia frowned, looking almost offended. "I didn't do this for money, Mr. Reeves." I know, he said quickly. "But there must be something you need. Something I can do to help." She hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "Actually, there is something. My daughter, Sophia. She's 7 years old and suffers from a rare heart condition. She needs surgery, but..." She stopped, swallowing. "Our insurance doesn't cover it, and I can't afford it." Alexander felt something strange in his chest. a mixture of compassion and determination that he wasn't used to feeling. "Consider it done," he said without hesitation. "I'll take care of all the medical costs. And more than that, I'll make sure she has the best doctors available." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Reeves, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," he replied. "It's the least I can do." At that moment, something changed between them. It wasn't gratitude or obligation. It was something deeper, more fundamental, a mutual recognition of humanity that transcended the barriers of class and status. In the days that followed, while Alexander recovered in hospital, Olivia visited him regularly. They talked about Sophia, about the challenges of being a single mother, about the dreams and aspirations that Olivia had put on the back burner in order to look after her daughter. Alexander found himself looking forward to these visits, fascinated by Olivia's strength and resilience. She had a perspective on life that he had never considered before, one that valued people over profits, compassion over competition. A week after the fire, Alexander was discharged from hospital. As he left, he was greeted by a crowd of reporters, all eager to hear the story of the millionaire CEO who had almost lost everything. "Mr. Reeves! Mr. Reeves!" the reporters shouted. "How do you feel after this near-death experience?" Alexander looked at the cameras, then at Olivia, who was standing discreetly to one side. He made an instant decision. "I'm grateful," he said, his voice firm. "Grateful for my life, and for the extraordinary courage of a woman who risked everything to save me." He gestured for Olivia to come closer. Reluctantly, she stepped forward. "This is Olivia Martinez," Alexander announced. "Without her, I wouldn't be here today. And because of her, I'm rethinking a lot of things about how I conduct my business and my life." Camera flashes went off as reporters fired off questions. Olivia looked uncomfortable in the spotlight, but Alexander put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "As of today," he continued, "Vertex Enterprises will be launching a new initiative. We're going to set up a fund to help employees with extraordinary medical needs, starting with Mrs. Martinez's daughter." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise, and she looked at Alexander with a mixture of shock and gratitude. As the reporters absorbed this information, asking more frantic questions, Alexander leaned towards Olivia. "This is just the beginning," he murmured. "I promise." That night, alone in his luxurious penthouse, Alexander stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. The Empire State Building shone in the distance, a symbol of the power and ambition that had guided his life for so long. But now, for the first time, he wondered if there was more to life than just accumulating wealth and power. Olivia's words echoed in his mind. Every life has value. Alexander picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Patricia?" he said when his assistant answered. "I need you to make some changes to my schedule for tomorrow. Cancel my meeting with the shareholders. Schedule a visit to the Children's Hospital instead, and find the best pediatric heart surgeon in the country. We have a girl to save." As he hung up the phone, Alexander felt something he hadn't felt for years, a sense of purpose that went beyond profits and acquisitions. It was a strange feeling, almost uncomfortable in its newness, but at the same time, it was thrilling. The Alexander Reeves who had walked into that burning building a week ago was no more. In his place was a different man, a man who was just beginning to understand the true meaning of value. And as night fell over Chicago, Alexander knew that his journey of transformation had only just begun. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the corridors of Chicago Children's Hospital, a surreal contrast to the seriousness that normally permeated the environment. Alexander Reeves walked alongside Olivia, both carrying bags full of toys and books. "Mr. Reeves, you really didn't have to do that," Olivia said, her tone a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. Alexander shook his head. "Please, call me Alexander." And yes, I did. "I want to meet Sophia and the other children. I want to understand." They arrived in a colorful room, decorated with drawings on the walls and miniature furniture. In the center, a little girl with dark hair and bright eyes was playing with a puzzle. She looked up as they entered, her face lighting up at the sight of Olivia. "Mommy!" Sophia exclaimed, running to hug Olivia. Alexander watched the scene, feeling an emotion he couldn't name, There was so much love in that simple embrace, so much joy despite the difficult circumstances. "Sophia, darling," Olivia said softly, "this is Mr. Reeves. He's come to visit us today." Sophia looked at Alexander curiously. "Are you the man Mom saved?" Alexander knelt down to be at her eye level. "Yes, it's me. Your mother is a true hero." The girl smiled, a smile that lit up her whole face despite the paleness of her condition. "She's the best mother in the world." In the minutes that followed, Alexander found himself completely captivated by Sophia. She was intelligent, funny, and full of life, despite her illness. They put puzzles together, read stories, and laughed at silly jokes. Olivia watched the interaction with a mixture of surprise and excitement. This was not the Alexander Reeves she knew from the pages of business magazines or the corridors of Vertex Enterprises. This man was kind, patient, and genuinely interested. Later, as Sophia dozed off, Alexander and Olivia chatted quietly in the hallway. "She's amazing," Alexander said, looking out of the bedroom window where Sophia was sleeping. "How does she manage to be so positive in the face of all this?" Olivia smiled sadly. "Children have incredible resilience, but it's not easy. Every day is a struggle." Alexander turned to her, his expression serious. "I spoke to Dr. Carrington this morning. He's the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country. He's agreed to take Sophia's case." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "Alexander, I don't know how to thank you." He put a hand on her shoulder, the gesture surprisingly natural. "No need to thank me. It's the least I can do." Just then, Alexander's cell phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. "Sorry, I have to take this." Alexander took a few steps away, his voice low but tense as he spoke into the phone. When he returned, his expression was grim. "Is everything all right?" Olivia asked, concerned. Alexander hesitated for a moment. "Not everything. It seems that not everyone in the company is happy with my new priorities." "Oh," Olivia said softly. "I'm sorry." "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "No, it's not your fault," Alexander assured her quickly. "It's just that, well, let's just say that change isn't easy, especially when you have shareholders to answer to." Olivia studied him for a moment. "Are you sorry about helping me, I mean?" "Not for a second," Alexander replied without hesitation. "What I'm doing now, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing the right thing." Olivia's smile was like a ray of sunshine breaking through clouds. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing too." They stood there for a moment, a comfortable silence between them. It was Olivia who finally spoke. "You know, when I was a kid, I dreamed of being a nurse," she said, almost absent-mindedly. "I wanted to help people, to make a difference, but life had other plans." Alexander looked at her curiously. "It's never too late to pursue a dream, you know." Olivia laughed softly. "Maybe, but with Sophia, with the bills, well, some dreams have to wait." Alexander was silent for a moment, an idea beginning to form in his mind. What if they didn't? Before Olivia could answer, a nurse appeared in the hallway. "Mr. Reeves, there's a group of reporters at reception asking for you." Alexander sighed. "I think it's time to face the music," he said with a wry smile. As they walked towards the reception, Alexander could feel the tension growing in his chest. He knew that his recent actions, the employee fund, the time spent at the hospital, had caused waves in the corporate world. Some called him a visionary philanthropist. Others accused him of losing focus. At reception, a wall of cameras and microphones awaited them. Alexander felt Olivia hesitate beside him. "You don't have to do that," he said softly. "I can deal with them on my own." But Olivia straightened her shoulders and shook her head. "No, we're in this together." The questions came fast and sharp. "Mr. Reeves, is it true that you're diverting company funds to charity? There are rumors that the board is unhappy with your recent decisions. Any comments? Ms. Martinez, what exactly is your relationship with Mr. Reeves?" Alexander raised his hands, asking for silence. When he spoke, his voice was firm and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last few days, I've learned a valuable lesson about what really matters in life. Yes, I am making changes at Vertex Enterprises. Changes that I believe will not only benefit our employees and their families, but will also make our company stronger and more sustainable in the long term. He paused, glancing at Olivia before continuing. As for Ms. Martinez, she's the reason I'm alive today, and thanks to her, I'm rediscovering the kind of leader and person I want to be. The cameras flashed furiously, more questions being thrown at them, but Alexander was already guiding Olivia back to the elevator. Wow, Olivia said as the doors closed. That was intense. Alexander laughed, the sound surprisingly light. Welcome to my world. Although I must say, it's a world that's changing fast. As the elevator rose back to Sophia's floor, Alexander found himself thinking about the future, the changes he wanted to make, the challenges he would face. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just thinking about profit and loss. He was thinking about people, of lives he could impact, of a brave little girl struggling with heart disease, and of a remarkable woman who had risked everything to save him, not just from the fire, but from himself. The elevator stopped, and the doors opened. Alexander looked at Olivia and smiled. Ready to face whatever comes next? He asked. Olivia smiled back, her eyes shining with a mixture of determination and hope. Together? She asked. Alexander nodded. Together. And with that, they stepped out of the elevator, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. Alexander Reeves' office at the top of Vertex Enterprises looked different that morning. The shutters, normally closed to block out the distractions of the city below, were open, allowing the Chicago sunlight to flood the space. In the center of the solid mahogany desk, where once stood only a state-of-the-art laptop, now stood a picture frame with a photo of Sophia smiling from her hospital bed. Alexander adjusted his tie, mentally preparing himself for the meeting that was about to begin. Over the last few days, he had stirred up a corporate hornet's nest with his new initiatives, and he knew that the board of directors would not remain silent for long. The door opened, and Patricia, his assistant, entered with a worried expression. Mr. Reeves, they're here. He nodded, taking a deep breath. Send them in, Patricia, and please cancel my appointments for this afternoon. I'm going to visit Sophia in hospital after the meeting. Patricia hesitated for a moment, clearly wanting to say something, but just nodded and left. Moments later, 5 men in expensive suits entered the room. Leading the way was Gerald Blackwell, chairman of the board, and Alexander's longtime mentor. Alexander, Gerald began, his voice deep and serious. I think we know why we're here. Alexander gestured for them to sit down. Yes, Gerald. I imagine you have some concerns about the recent changes in the company. Concerns? Another board member, Michael Stern, interrupted. Alexander, you're throwing away years of hard work and corporate strategy because of a sudden philanthropic impulse. Alexander remained calm, his eyes moving to Sophia's photo. Gentlemen, I understand your concerns, but I firmly believe that what we're doing is not only morally correct, but also beneficial for the company in the long run. Morally correct? Gerald repeated, frowning. Alexander, we built this company to make a profit, not to be a charity. And who says we can't do both? Alexander replied, getting up and walking over to the window. Look at the city outside. How many lives could we positively impact if we used our resources more consciously? The room fell silent for a moment, the board members exchanging worried glances. Alexander, Gerald finally spoke, his voice softer. I understand that you've been through a traumatic experience, and that woman, Olivia, she clearly had a profound impact on you. But you can't let momentary emotions dictate the course of a multi-billion-dollar company. Alexander turned, facing Gerald. This isn't about momentary emotions, Gerald. It's about rediscovering purpose, about using our power and influence to do more than just accumulate wealth. Noble, Michael Stern scoffed. But the shareholders won't share your enthusiasm when they see next quarter's figures. Maybe, Alexander agreed. Or maybe they'll see the value of a company that cares about more than just immediate profit, a company that invests in its people, in its community. The discussion went on for hours, voices rising and heated arguments being exchanged. When it finally ended, Alexander was exhausted but determined. "Gentlemen," he said, standing up, "I appreciate your concerns, but my mind is made up. Let's move forward with the new initiatives. If that means I need to buy more shares to keep control, then so be it." Gerald was the last to leave, pausing at the door to look at his former protege. "Alexander, I hope you know what you're doing." Alexander smiled tiredly. "For the first time in a long time, Gerald, I think I do." After everyone had left, Alexander picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Olivia? Yes, the meeting's over. I'm on my way to the hospital. How's Sophia?" As he drove through the busy streets of Chicago, Alexander reflected on the changes of the last few weeks. His life, once so focused on numbers and acquisitions, now seemed to revolve around two people he had barely known for a month. At the hospital, he met Olivia in the corridor outside Sophia's room. She looked tired, but smiled when she saw him. "How was the meeting?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Alexander shrugged. "Difficult, but it was expected. How's our girl?" The use of "our" didn't go unnoticed by Olivia, who blushed slightly. "She's excited. Dr. Carrington said the surgery can be scheduled for next week." Alexander felt a lump in his throat. That's great." They went into the bedroom together, where Sophia was sitting on the bed, drawing. Her face lit up when she saw Alexander. "Alex!" she exclaimed, using the nickname she had adopted for him. "Look what I've drawn." Alexander approached, picking up the drawing. It was a stick figure in a suit, holding hands with two smaller figures, a woman and a girl. "That's us," Sophia explained proudly. "You, Mom, and me." Alexander felt something warm and moist on his cheeks. It took him a moment to realize they were tears. Olivia put a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle and comforting. "Is everything all right?" He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he finally found his voice, it was hoarse with emotion. "Yes," he said, "everything's perfect." That evening, after leaving the hospital, Alexander stopped his car at a viewpoint overlooking the city. The lights of Chicago twinkled below, a man-made carpet of stars. He picked up his phone and opened an email he had started writing earlier. It was addressed to all the employees of Vertex Enterprises. "Dear colleagues," it began, "over the past few weeks, I've been through an experience that has profoundly changed my perspective on our company and our role in the community. I am writing to share with you some exciting changes that we will be implementing." As he typed, Alexander felt a sense of purpose that he hadn't experienced for a long time. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult. There would be resistance, criticism, perhaps even attempts to remove him from office. But looking out over the city below, thinking of Olivia and Sophia, and all the lives he could positively impact, Alexander knew he was on the right track. He finished the email and clicked send. Then, with a smile, he started the car and began driving home, looking forward to what the new day would bring. The next morning dawned with Chicago bustling, the buzz of the city seeping through the windows of Alexander's apartment. He woke up earlier than usual, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation pulsing through his veins. The email he had sent the night before to everyone at Vertex Enterprises would certainly make waves, and he knew he had to be prepared to face the consequences. While eating his breakfast, Alexander checked his cell phone. Dozens of notifications flashed across the screen, emails, text messages, missed calls. He took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for the day ahead. On his way to the office, Alexander made an unscheduled stop. The small, cozy cafe where Olivia worked part-time was just a few blocks from Vertex. He walked in, the bell on the door announcing his arrival. Olivia was behind the counter, her hair in a messy bun, a coffee-stained apron tied around her waist. Her eyes widened in surprise at the sight of him. "Alexander?" What are you doing here? He smiled, feeling strangely nervous. I thought I could use some extra strong coffee today. Big day. Olivia nodded, understanding. The email. Have you seen it? A colleague showed it to me, she said, starting to prepare the coffee. It's quite a change, Alexander. He watched as she worked, her movements precise and efficient. I'm doing the right thing, aren't I? He asked, a rare note of insecurity in his voice. Olivia stopped what she was doing and looked directly at him. Yes, you are. It's not easy, but it's right. Alexander felt a knot in his stomach unravel at these words. Thank you, he said softly. That means a lot. When Olivia handed him the coffee, their fingers brushed briefly. A moment of electricity passed between them, making them both step back in surprise. Good luck today, Olivia said, a slight blush on her cheeks. Alexander nodded, picking up his coffee. See you later at the hospital? Of course, she smiled. Sophia is looking forward to seeing you. With one last look, Alexander left the cafe, feeling strangely strengthened to face the day. At Vertex Enterprises, the mood was palpable. Employees whispered in the corridors, casting curious glances as Alexander passed. In his office, Patricia was waiting for him with a tense expression. Mr. Reeves, she began, the board is demanding an emergency meeting. And there are reporters in the lobby. Alexander nodded, not surprised. Thank you, Patricia. Please schedule the meeting for this afternoon. As for the reporters, tell them I'll make a statement after the board meeting. He sat down at his desk, turning on his computer. His inbox was flooded. To his surprise, not all the messages were negative. Many employees were expressing enthusiastic support for the proposed changes. One email in particular caught her eye. It was from an employee in the accounting department. Dear Mr. Reeves, I never thought I would say this, but today I cried reading a corporate email. My daughter was diagnosed with cancer last year, and the medical bills have been overwhelming. To know that the company is establishing a fund to help employees like me, well, I don't have the words to express my gratitude. Thank you for seeing us as people, not just numbers. Alexander felt a lump in his throat. This was what he was fighting for. For people like this employee, like Olivia, like Sophia. The afternoon came quickly, and with it, the board meeting. As expected, it was tense and heated. Several members expressed concerns about the financial impact of the new initiatives. Others questioned whether Alexander was emotionally stable enough to lead the company. Gentlemen, Alexander finally said, his voice firm, I understand your concerns, but I ask you to trust me. What we're doing is not only morally right, but also smart from a business point of view. Happy, healthy employees are more productive. A reputation for social responsibility will attract talent and customers. We are building a stronger and more sustainable company. The meeting ended without a clear resolution, but Alexander knew he had planted a seed. Some board members seemed thoughtful, less hostile than at the beginning. Exhausted but determined, Alexander went downstairs to face the reporters. The cameras flashed as he approached the makeshift podium in the lobby. Good afternoon, he began. Today, Vertex Enterprises is embarking on a new journey, a journey that puts people at the center of everything we do. As he spoke, Alexander saw a familiar face at the back of the crowd. Olivia was there, Sophia beside her in a wheelchair. The girl smiled broadly, giving a little wave when their eyes met. At that moment, all of Alexander's doubts vanished. He knew, with a certainty he had never felt before, that he was on the right track. After the press conference, Alexander approached Olivia and Sophia. What are you doing here? He asked, surprised but obviously happy. Sophia smiled. We've come to give you strength. Mom said you were having a hard day. Alexander knelt beside Sophia's wheelchair, deeply touched. You're both amazing. You know that. Olivia put a hand on his shoulder. You were amazing there, Alexander. We're proud of you. He stood up, feeling a surge of emotion. How about we go and celebrate? I know a great place that serves the best ice cream in town. Sophia's eyes lit up. Ice cream? Yes, please. As they walked out of the Vertex building together, Alexander realized that, for the first time in years, he didn't care what the tabloids would say or what the shareholders would think. Everything that mattered was there, right next to him. The day had been a whirlwind of emotions and challenges, but as they walked down a sunny Chicago street, Alexander felt a peace he hadn't experienced for a long time. He knew that the road ahead would still be difficult, but with Olivia and Sophia by his side, he felt ready to face any obstacle. The days following Alexander's press conference were a whirlwind of activity. Vertex Enterprises became the center of a national debate on corporate responsibility and business ethics. While some praised the company's new direction, others criticized it as naive and potentially damaging to shareholders. In the midst of all this turmoil, Alexander found an unexpected safe haven, Sophia's hospital room. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and Alexander had slipped out of the office early to visit Sophia before her surgery, scheduled for the following day. When he arrived in the room, he found Olivia sitting on the bed next to her daughter, reading a book. And then the little prince said, "What is essential is invisible to the eye," Olivia read softly. Alexander stopped at the door, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Sophia was the first to notice him, her face lighting up with a smile. "Alex, you came!" Olivia looked up in surprise, but a warm smile spread across her face. "Alexander, we didn't expect you so soon." He entered the room, placing a bag on the nightstand next to the bed. "I thought I could use a break from the chaos. I've brought something for our brave patient." Sophia leaned over anxiously as Alexander took a small package out of the bag. It was a book, beautifully bound. "The Little Prince." Sophia read the title, her eyes sparkling. "Like the one Mom was reading." Alexander nodded, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. "It's a special edition. I thought we could read it together after your surgery." Olivia watched the interaction with mixed emotions. Seeing Alexander, the once cold CEO, being so kind and attentive to his daughter still surprised her. "How are things at the company?" she asked softly, as Sophia flipped through the book reverently. Alexander sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Complicated. But we're making progress. The new medical assistance fund has already helped dozens of families." Olivia placed her hand over his, the gesture so natural that neither of them seemed to notice. "You're making a difference, Alexander. That's what matters." They stood like that for a moment, connected, until Sophia broke the silence. "Alex, can you stay with me and Mom tonight? I'm a bit scared about tomorrow." The request took Alexander by surprise. He looked at Olivia for guidance. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "If you can, that would be great. I think we could all use the support." "Of course," Alexander replied without hesitation. "There's nowhere I'd rather be." As the evening progressed, the small hospital room turned into a cozy refuge. Alexander ordered food, and they dined together, laughing at Sophia's stories and sharing moments from their lives. Later, when Sophia finally fell asleep, Alexander and Olivia found themselves alone in the hospital corridor. "Thank you for staying," Olivia said softly. "It means a lot to Sophia. And to me." Alexander looked her in the eye, feeling something change between them. "Olivia, there's something I need to tell you." She tilted her head, curious. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "Over the last few weeks, you and Sophia have become, well, you've become the most important part of my life. I didn't even know I was looking for something like this, but now I can't imagine my life without you two." Olivia was silent for a moment, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Alexander, Before she could finish, Dr. Carrington appeared in the hallway. "Ah, how nice that you're both here," he said. "I'd like to discuss some final details about tomorrow's surgery." The moment was broken, but something had changed. As they followed the doctor into his office, Alexander and Olivia remained close, their fingers brushing lightly against each other. The morning of the surgery arrived with a mixture of apprehension and hope. Alexander had spent the night in an uncomfortable armchair in Sophia's room, but he felt more rested than he had in years. While the nurses prepared Sophia for surgery, Alexander pulled Olivia into a corner. "Hey," he said softly, holding her hands. "It's going to be okay. Sophia is strong, just like her mother." Olivia nodded, silent tears running down her cheeks. "I know. It's just... what if..." Alexander pulled her into a hug, feeling her tremble in his arms. "Don't think about what if. We're here, together. We'll face this together." When they parted, there was a new determination in Olivia's eyes. She turned to Sophia, who was being taken to the operating room. "Mommy loves you, sweetheart," Olivia said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "We'll be here when you wake up." Sophia smiled bravely. "I know, Mom. Alex will take care of you, won't you, Alex?" Alexander felt a lump in his throat. "Of course, Princess. We'll be here waiting for you." As they watched Sophia being taken away, Alexander put an arm around Olivia's shoulders. They stayed like that, united, facing together whatever the future held. The next few hours were the longest of Alexander's life. He and Olivia would walk down the corridor, drink coffee, talk quietly, always on the lookout for any news. It was during one of these conversations that Olivia finally responded to Alexander's unfinished confession from the night before. "You know," she began, her voice almost a whisper, "when I saved you in that fire, I never imagined that you would end up saving me and Sophia in so many different ways." Alexander looked at her, feeling his heart racing. "Olivia, But before he could finish, Dr. Carrington appeared, still dressed in his surgical uniform. "The surgery was a success," he announced with a smile. "Sophia is recovering well." The relief that flooded Alexander was overwhelming. Without thinking, he pulled Olivia into a tight hug, spinning her in the air. When their feet touched the ground again, their faces were inches apart. For a moment, the world around them disappeared. Then, slowly and gently, their lips met in a tender kiss full of promise. When they broke apart, they were both smiling, tears of joy in their eyes. "I think we have a lot to talk about," Alexander said softly. Olivia nodded, her smile radiant. "Yes, we do. But first, let's go see our girl." Hand in hand, they followed Dr. Carrington into the recovery room, ready to begin the next chapter of their lives together. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of the hospital room, casting a golden glow over Sophia, who was sleeping peacefully. Alexander was sitting in a chair next to the bed, his laptop balanced precariously on his knees as he worked silently. Olivia had gone home for a well-deserved rest after spending entire days in hospital. A week had passed since Sophia's successful surgery, and each day brought new challenges and joys. Alexander divided his time between the hospital and Vertex Enterprises, navigating turbulent waters in both places. A soft movement in the bed caught his attention. Sophia was waking up, her eyes blinking sleepily. "Good morning, Princess," Alexander said softly, closing his laptop and leaning closer. "How are you feeling?" Sophia smiled, still a little groggy. "Better. Where's Mom?" "She went home to get some rest. She'll be back soon," he replied, adjusting her pillow. "Would you like me to read you some more of The Little Prince?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically, and Alexander took the book. As he read, his mind wandered back to the events of the last few days. The kiss with Olivia had changed everything, opening up a world of possibilities that he had never considered before. They still hadn't had a chance to talk properly about what had happened, both focused on Sophia's recovery. But there was a new intimacy between them, soft touches and meaningful glances. Alexander was interrupted in his thoughts by a soft knock on the door. To his surprise, it was Gerald Blackwell, the chairman of the board of Vertex. "Gerald," Alexander said, getting up, "what are you doing here?" Gerald entered the room, looking uncomfortable. His eyes landed on Sophia, who was watching him curiously. "I came to see how things were going," Gerald said, his voice softer than Alexander had ever heard it. "And to talk, if you have a moment." Alexander hesitated, looking at Sophia. "Princess, will you be all right on your own for a few minutes?" Sophia nodded bravely. "Of course, Alex. I'll continue reading on my own." With one last smile for Sophia, Alexander went out into the corridor with Gerald. "So," Alexander began, crossing his arms, "what brings the mighty Gerald Blackwell to a children's hospital?" Gerald sighed, looking suddenly older and more tired. "Alexander, I made a mistake. Several, actually." Alexander arched an eyebrow, surprised. "Go on." "I was so focused on the numbers, the quarterly reports, that I lost sight of what really matters," Gerald admitted. "Seeing you here, with that little girl, reminded me why I went into business in the first place, to make a difference." Alexander was silent, processing Gerald's words. "The board voted last night," Gerald continued. "We decided to fully support your new initiatives. In fact, we want to expand them." Alexander felt a wave of relief and excitement. "Gerald, that's incredible, but what's changed?" Gerald smiled sadly. "Let's just say that your story, and that of this family, has touched more hearts than you know. Many of us saw ourselves reflected in you, Alexander, the man we were and the man we wanted to be." Before Alexander could reply, Olivia appeared at the end of the corridor. She stopped at the sight of Gerald, a worried expression crossing her face. "Is everything all right?" she asked, approaching. Alexander smiled, holding out his hand to her. Olivia took it without hesitation, interlacing their fingers. "Everything's fine," he replied, looking at Gerald. "In fact, I think things are about to get even better." Gerald watched the interaction with interest. "Miss Martinez, I presume? It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Olivia nodded, still cautious. "Likewise, Mr. Blackwell." "Please call me Gerald," he said, smiling genuinely. "Alexander, why don't you take Miss Martinez out for a coffee? I can stay with Sophia for a while. That is, if she doesn't mind the company of a grumpy old man." Alexander and Olivia exchanged surprised glances, but agreed. After checking in with Sophia, who seemed intrigued by the idea of meeting Alexander's boss's boss, they left for the hospital cafeteria. Sitting at a corner table, their hands still intertwined, Alexander and Olivia finally had a chance to talk. "So," Olivia began, a slight blush on her cheeks, "I think we have a lot to discuss." Alexander nodded, his thumb gently caressing her hand. "Yes, we do. Olivia, I've never felt anything like what I feel for you and Sophia. You've changed my life in ways I didn't even know were possible." Olivia smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Alexander, you saved us, not just financially, but you brought light back into our lives. Sophia adores you, and She stopped, biting her lip nervously. Alexander leaned forward, his heart racing. "I'm falling in love with you," Olivia admitted softly. "And that scares me. Everything is happening so fast, and our lives are so different." Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "I know. I'm scared too. But Olivia, I've never been so sure of anything in my life. I want to be part of your life, of Sophia's life, if you let me." Olivia looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and love reflected there. Slowly, she leaned forward, her lips meeting his in a soft, tender kiss. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. "I guess that's a yes," Alexander asked, his playful tone barely masking the emotion in his voice. Olivia laughed, the sound filling Alexander with joy. "Yes, Alexander, it's definitely a yes." They stood there, talking and planning for the future, for almost an hour before heading back to Sophia's room. When they arrived, they were greeted by a surprising scene. Gerald was sitting on the edge of Sophia's bed, both of them laughing as he animatedly told her a story. The book, The Little Prince, was open on his lap. "And then the little prince realized that the most important thing in life is the connections we make," Gerald was saying. Sophia looked at the door, her face lighting up when she saw Alexander and Olivia. "Mom, Alex, Mr. Gerald was telling me about when he was a child. Did you know he wanted to be an astronaut?" Alexander and Olivia exchanged amused glances before entering the room. As they joined in the conversation, Alexander felt a sense of contentment he had never experienced before. There, In that small hospital room, with Olivia by his side, Sophia laughing and even the once intimidating Gerald Blackwell smiling and telling stories, Alexander Reeves knew that he had finally found his home. The future would still bring challenges, of course. There would be adjustments to make, both in his personal and professional life. But for the first time, Alexander was looking forward to facing those challenges, because now he had something to fight for, something far more valuable than any fortune he had ever amassed. He had love. He had family. And that, he realized, was true success. A year had passed since that fateful day of the fire that had changed the lives of Alexander Reeves, Olivia Martinez, and little Sophia forever. Autumn painted the streets of Chicago in shades of gold and red, an apt metaphor for the transformation they had all experienced. Alexander adjusted his tie, glancing nervously at his reflection in the mirror. Today was no ordinary day. It was the day of his wedding to Olivia. "Nervous, boss?" Gerald Blackwell's amused voice came from behind him. The former chairman of the board, now one of Alexander's closest friends, was serving as his best man. Alexander smiled, turning to face Gerald. "A little, but in a good way." Gerald patted Alexander comfortingly on the shoulder. "You've come a long way, son. I'm proud of you." The words touched Alexander deeply. Gerald had become a kind of father figure to him over the last year, guiding him through the complexities of balancing his new personal life with his corporate responsibilities. A soft knock on the door interrupted the moment. Sophia entered, radiant in her bridesmaid's dress. "Alex, you look so handsome," she exclaimed, rushing to embrace him. Alexander took her in his arms, amazed at how healthy and happy she looked. The surgery had been a complete success, and Sophia was now an energetic and vibrant 8-year-old. "Thank you, Princess," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "Is your mother ready?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, she looks beautiful, Alex. You'll cry when you see her, I'm sure." Alexander laughed, feeling his heart fill with love. "You're probably right." As they made their way to the ceremony site, a beautiful garden at the top of the Vertex Enterprises building, Alexander reflected on the past year. The changes in the company had been profound. The employee healthcare fund had expanded, becoming a model for other corporations. Vertex was now recognized not only for its financial success, but also for its ethics and social responsibility. Personally, Alexander's life had blossomed in ways he had never imagined possible. He, Olivia, and Sophia had become a family, filling a void in his heart that he hadn't even known existed. The ceremony was intimate and emotional. When Olivia walked down the aisle, Alexander felt the tears that Sophia had predicted. She looked stunning, but more than her outer beauty, it was the love in her eyes that left him breathless. "We are gathered here today," the officiant began, "to celebrate the union of two souls who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances." As they exchanged vows, Alexander saw his whole life reflected in Olivia's eyes. The man he was before, cold, focused only on profits, seemed like a distant memory. "I, Alexander, take you, Olivia, to be my wife," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "I promise to love not only you, but also Sophia, with all my heart. You have taught me the true meaning of success and happiness, and I promise to spend the rest of my life repaying all the love and joy you have brought into my life." Olivia smiled through her tears. "Alexander, you came into our lives as a saving angel, but you've become so much more than that. You're my partner, my best friend, and the father Sophia always dreamed of. I promise to be by your side in all the challenges and joys that life brings us, loving you more every day." When the officiant declared them man and wife, the small assembly erupted in applause. Sophia was the first to embrace them, her eyes shining with happiness. The reception that followed was a celebration not only of Alexander and Olivia's love, but also of the change they had brought to so many lives. Vertex employees, patients who had been helped by the Care Fund, and even some former critics who had been converted by the sincerity of Alexander's actions, were all present. Later that evening, as the party continued, Alexander found a quiet moment on the terrace. Looking out over the city below, he felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. Olivia joined him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about, Mr. Reeves?" she asked softly. Alexander smiled, pulling her close. "About how incredibly lucky I am, Mrs. Reeves, and how I can't wait to see what the future holds." "Well," Olivia said, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes, "maybe the future will come faster than you think." Alexander looked at her, curious. "What do you mean?" Olivia took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "Let's just say that Sophia might be about to get a little brother or sister." For a moment, Alexander was speechless, a wave of emotion running through him. Then, with a cry of joy, he scooped Olivia up in his arms and spun her around in the air. Their laughter mingled with the music from the party, echoing through the Chicago night. And at that moment, Alexander Reeves knew with absolute certainty that he had finally found the true meaning of wealth and success. It wasn't measured in dollars or stocks, but in the love of his family, the difference he could make in the lives of others, and the joy of waking up every day with a purpose greater than himself. As he and Olivia walked back to the party, hand in hand and hearts full, Alexander knew that his journey was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning of an exciting new adventure, and he couldn't wait to see where it would take them.